We got some brand new information about YNW Bortlen that changes everything in the YNW Melly trial. Bortlen was called in by the judge, and boy did he start talking. It's clear as day Bortlen is snitching on Melly, and he's ready to throw him under the bus. But is this such a big surprise, really? Melly's kind of trying to do the same thing to Bortlen. Here's what's going on. In the spooky events that went down in October of 2018, YNW Demons and his crew, consisting of his buddies Anthony DeAndre Williams, aka YNW Sack Chaser, Christopher Thomas Jr., aka YNW Juvie, and Cortland Malik Henry, aka YNW Bortlen, gathered at a rapper's crib to shoot a music video. But little did they know, things were about to take a tragic turn. After they wrapped up at the location, Juvie and Sack Chaser were tragically shot and killed, leaving Bortlen with the horrifying task of taking their lifeless bodies to a nearby hospital. He claimed they were the victims of a drive-by shooting in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Surprisingly, despite the recent loss of their childhood friends, Melly and Bortlen showed up in a music video the very next day as planned. However, justice caught up with them, and they were indicted by a grand jury charged with premeditated first-degree murder for Sack and Juvie. Eventually, on February 13, 2019, both of them were arrested and taken into custody. Melly insisted on his innocence and pleaded not guilty as the legal process began. This case serves as a chilling reminder of the darkest aspects of human nature and the pursuit of justice when faced with unspeakable crimes. After a lengthy wait of 5 years, the state finally built its case and kicked off the trial against Melly. The atmosphere was heavy with the weight of the accusations as the long-anticipated trial began its initial phase on April 11, 2023, with the intricate process of jury selection taking place. Choosing the individuals who would ultimately determine Melly's fate was a critical step in the pursuit of justice. As y'all know, once the jury was carefully assembled, the trial officially started on June 12, 2023, marking a significant milestone in the legal proceedings. Prosecution, aiming for the harshest punishment possible, left no stone unturned in their quest to secure the death penalty for old Melly. This emphasized the gravity of the alleged crimes and their profound impact on the community. As the trial unfolds, the courtroom transfers into a stage where evidence is presented, testimonies are heard, and a delicate balance between guilt and innocence hangs in the air. All eyes are watching closely, and the legal system carries the weight of the proceedings. We found out if Melly is going to be found guilty or if he's going to duck this case. Now let's take a closer look at the serious and somber events of YNW Melly's trial for double murder. The significance of the situation cannot be downplayed, as the defendant is facing accusations of brutally killing 2 individuals. The state firmly maintains that YNW Melly is a merciless and calculated murderer, while the defense disputes their ability to provide substantial evidence to support their allegations. After about more than an hour, Bortlen showed up at the ER with Juvie and Sack Chaser in his car, lifeless. It was strange that Melly wasn't there, and Bortlen claimed that they were victims of a drive-by shooting. But people got suspicious because Bortlen didn't have any injuries. Now Bortlen's facing his own charges, while Melly is facing the possibility of death penalty thanks to an all-new law in Florida that made it easier to reach a guilty verdict. The trial kicked off with the prosecution's opening statements delivered by Assistant State Attorney Christine Bradley. She confidently portrayed Melly as a heartless killer who brutally murdered his 2 friends. To back up her claims, she gave a chilling account of what supposedly happened. At 4:35 a.m. on October 26, 2018, Bortlen arrived at Memorial Miramar Hospital with Sack Chaser and Juvie in his car, both of them full of bullet holes. As the trial went on, evidence started coming up that contradicted Bortlen's initial story about the drive-by shooting. Prosecutors argued that Melly's affiliation with the gang, along with a suspicious Instagram message, was basically a confession. They looked at the context of the message to understand its meaning and how it tied Melly to the crime. On the other side, the defense, led by attorney David Howard, fought back against the prosecutor's claims. They said there wasn't enough evidence to prove Melly's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Howard questioned the credibility of the investigation and Detective Murray, who seemed to focus solely on Melly as the main culprit. The defense pointed out the issues with the investigation, including mistakes that were discovered 3 years later, leading to a fresh look at the case. They aimed to undermine the prosecution's argument by challenging the forensic evidence, like the absence of the murder weapon and the possibility of multiple guns being used. They also raised doubts about the trajectory and angle of the shots and questioned the reliability of gunshot residue testing. The second week of the trial has been full of drama, with accusations of misconduct by the prosecution and the emergence of new evidence that could potentially connect the rapper to the crime. During this time, the focus turned to cell phone evidence, which has become a critical factor in many trials nowadays. FBI Special Agent Brendan Collins took the stand and testified about the analysis of 2 phones linked to Melly and one of the victims. The prosecution argues that the data from the cell phones places Melly close to the victims shortly before they were found dead. However, the defense raises doubts about the accuracy of the location data and questioned whether or not Melly was the only person using the phone in question. Another important piece of evidence discussed in the trial was DNA analysis. The prosecution presented DNA evidence suggesting that Melly was present in the car where the shootings occurred. The defense pointed out that Melly's DNA didn't match other items tested, casting doubt on his direct involvement in the crime. Throughout the trial, there's been procedural issues and disagreements between the prosecution and defense. One incident involved the state conducting a new test on evidence without promptly sharing the results with the defense. The judge criticized the prosecution for not adhering to the principles of fairness and full disclosure. The prosecution also tried to show why Melly might have committed the murders by pointing out his supposed ties to the G-Shine Bloods gang. Detective Polo took the stand and talked about Melly's social media posts, videos, and references to the gangs in his song. They were trying to suggest a connection between the rapper and the criminal organization, but the defense questioned whether this was the real Melly or just a persona that he was creating for social media. As the trial keeps on going, the prosecution wants to prove Melly's guilt without a doubt and maybe even get a conviction with the death penalty on the table. On the other hand, the defense is challenging the evidence presented and raising doubts about Melly's involvement in the crime at all. The outcome of this trial will have a big impact on Melly's future and the justice system as a whole. On June 28th, the only witness was a super detail-oriented analyst who meticulously reconstructed what happened, completely debunking the idea of a drive-by shooting. They made an intriguing discovery during Juvie's post-mortem examination. They found an injury on the left side of his cheek with stippling, which indicated that the shots were fired from very close range. This shooting expert took the stand and explained how they determined where the shots came from and their trajectory. And as we put the pieces together, it becomes clear that the shots didn't come from a passing car, but rather from the back seat on the driver's side. The big question is how much time passed between these fatal shots and the carefully planned cover-up. That period of time was crucial because it allowed the victims' hearts to stop beating and their blood to stop circulating. The evidence presented raises doubts about the actual use of the depicted firearm. Interestingly, the witnesses couldn't recall ever witnessing a scene like this during their career, adding even more intrigue to the trial. Now, at this point, you're probably curious about Melly and how he's handling this whole situation. And let me tell you, he's not exactly playing it by the rulebook. In fact, he's doing the complete opposite. There's footage from the trial where Melly's totally acting out of line, and dare I say, inappropriate. Can you believe it? This guy's actually laughing right here in the courtroom while they're presenting evidence against him in a freaking death penalty case. And get this, he even blew kisses to everyone in the courtroom. That's just asking for trouble, man. The jury's watching every single move Melly makes, and you can bet they won't forget this behavior when it comes time to make their final decision. If that don't speak volumes about Melly, I don't know what does. Some think it's only natural when, you're staring in the eyes of defeat. He's laughing because he knows that the gig is up, and he had, I guess, a good run. Some think he's doing it because that's what he is, pure evil. The way he acts is like someone who had killed somebody, no remorse and no soul. He checked out the day he decided to kill him. That's just his demon form in court. YNW Juvie's mom, Leandra Phillips, stepped up to the witness stand, and you could see just the determination in her eyes. She spilled the beans about what really went down that night. And boy, did she make it crystal clear. Pointing right at her own son, Juvie, she confidently identified him in the surveillance footage from outside the New Era recording studio in good old Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The whole jury was glued to the screen, taking in every detail of Melly, Juvie, Sack Chaser, and Bortlen as they left that studio on that cursed day. But wait, it gets even more intense. Assistant State Attorney Christine Bradley, that legal whiz, starts spinning a story like a pro. She focuses on the importance of the video that was recorded right before those 2 tragic murders went down in the early hours of October 26, 2018. And here's the kicker, the footage shows Melly sliding into the back left seat of the Jeep, Sack Chaser riding shoddy, and Juvie just chilling in the back right seat. Then the prosecutor turned to Juvie's mom and straight up asked her to confirm that her son was right there in that bone-chilling video. Naturally, she said, yeah, and no matter how hard it was, she knew she had to do it if she wanted to see justice for her Juvie. Some believe this to be crucial, given that her testimony undoubtedly puts Melly right where the prosecutor wants him to be. Back seat, behind the driver. That's where he pulled the trigger. But she wasn't the only person in court that week. We had another guy turn up, and that's right, he's the big shot in this case, Bortlen. Melly's partner in crime, YNW Bortlen, was in court the other day for a status hearing. He tried to get his bail terms changed so that he could travel for work, but the judge shut him down. So now he's stuck on house arrest. Now you might be wondering why Bortlen got bail while Melly didn't. Well, it's because Melly has a history of trouble with the law, including a past conviction for shooting at people outside of school. Bortlen, on the other hand, doesn't have much of a rap sheet, just some minor stuff. Plus, they're saying he wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, and they offered him house arrest, so that's probably why the judge gave him bail. And remember, the recently discovered recordings shed a new light on the tragic night when Melly supposedly committed the alleged murking. There's audio recordings that capture conversations between Melly and Bortlen as they tell the police what happened. In these revealing recordings, Bortlen was clearly nervous when he told the story of how the alleged drive-by went down. You could feel an underlying tension, suggesting that the narrative being presented might not match up with the actual sequence of events.
What can I like tell you? If I'm ducking for my life, my head's over here, steering wheel's here. I'm trying to make sure I'm like, you know what I'm saying? But like I'm keeping the car straight by hitting median, you know what I'm saying? That shit f***ed me up, bro.
This evidence could be a game changer in the trial because it reveals a lot about Bortlen, and the fact that he lied could become a crucial point in the upcoming days. People know that if there's one piece of evidence that can definitely pull Melly behind bars, or even worse, it could be Bortlen's testimony. He's the only one who could seal Melly's fate once and for all. We've seen Bortlen appear in front of a court just the other day, and he looked ready to accuse Melly, saying that he's the one who committed the crime. There wouldn't be much to be said in Melly's defense in that case. Now let's talk about Bortlen testifying. If he gets up there and starts pointing fingers at Melly, man, it's going to be tough for the defense to do anything about it. Bortlen's testimony could be the final nail in Melly's coffin, you know what I'm saying. But here's the thing, experts think that Melly's lawyers might try to blame Bortlen instead. As the trial goes on, it's becoming very clear that the state has some strong evidence against Melly, even though it's only based on a lot of circumstantial evidence. One fan comment online makes you really put things into perspective and wonder what this case tells us about us as a society. This case is a microcosm of our society that we award negative behaviors of others. Melly is still getting all this attention and publicity, yet no one talks about the two young brothers who lost their lives that night. The young brothers and their families are the true victims. I hope justice will be served. But what's y'all's take on this Melly trial? And what do you think will be the final outcome for him? Do you think he'll serve life behind bars, or do you think he might get the death penalty? Let us know what you think down about it below in the comments section. And if you like this video, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, before you go, just got a reminder, keep it RIZZLE.